Wonderful. So, as you know today, and we warned you, we're going to be nerding out on all of the advanced bot building options. So, the idea behind this, it can be quite technical, but it's really nice to have these things in your tool belt to be able to kind of do more with your bots. So, we're going to cover a few things today on like what the different things you can do. We're going to show you very briefly about how it's set up and how it operates. But more than anything, we want you to take inspiration from this today. So if you see something you really like and you need a little bit more of a hand to set something up with your bots, then talk to us afterwards and, we'll help you further. Because I think otherwise you're probably going to rush through this and maybe struggle a little bit or just watch it on replay. So let's start. Okay, well, I think if you don't know us already, I think a lot of you have been to our webinars before, but obviously Gavin said hello at the beginning. I'm Helen, so obviously I know nothing about football, as you've discovered. So a lot of you might have met me during the onboarding period. All right, so the things we're going to cover today, so I guess what we call them, which is labels and scoring and what they do and how you can use them, variables, and the lookup node. So, and I think this will make a lot more sense as we start talking through, what those are. All right. So with labeling and scoring, the main thing we use them for is filtering leads. So as you can see kind of in the screenshot here, and we'll show you in more detail shortly, is that we've got these kind of light blue labels that are showing up. So that means that anytime someone selects a quote, then I can send it through to the sales team. If they're going through recruitment, I send it to the HR team. So pretty straightforward, but it just means like automatic lead filtering. You can also use this to send data straight into your CRM. So you can kind of, based on people's selections, send that data through from the conversation. You can also use this to analyze engagement. So when you meet with the CS team, if you've had any of your sessions together, you'll notice you'll look at the bot insights and you can see how many times that label's been triggered across your entire account. Lastly, it lets us do some smart things with logic. So we can say, if someone selected this button with this label, do that. So you could be a lot more conditional with what they see in the bot. Next, it'll be dynamic variables. So this kind of has quite a few different uses. So we'll show you a couple different versions of this today anyway. But you can either kind of attach kind of more complex information to your lead that isn't necessarily in the bot, but it's on your web page. You can also use it to personalize the journey, so we can kind of capture that information, or even kind of send that into your CRM as well. This will make more sense, I think, when we show you the examples. But one of the key things that people use this a lot for is actually creating calculations. So that means you can generate some kind of quote based on the user selections right there in the bot. And lastly, it's the lookup tool. So this is quite, I suppose, a niche tool that we've got, but it can be really powerful if you take the time to set it up. So the examples that we're going to show you is how you can deliver the right download based on the page that someone's on without them having to make a selection of it. And also kind of bringing back information from a table. So in this case, it's like core states. So it just means it's coming from one place. And that means you've only got one place to update, even though it might be in 10 or 20 bots. All right. That was a quick fire of what we're covering. So we're just going to go back up to here and start the demo in the platform. So is there any questions before we get going?
Cool. I will get started then. Let's log into the platform. So we're going to do the labeling and the scoring first, and then we'll throw back to Helen and we'll go into the dynamic variables. But you will notice that there's a bit of overlap when we go through these things because we often use them all together. The labeling will we'll go into the different like logic routers and those pathways, and the variables will be on like the lead cards, and you will see how these sort of things sort of intertwine with each other. So first, I want to just show you where you can find your labels in the platform to create them, how you can use them in the reporting piece that Helen was mentioning, and how you use them in like leads and filtering those leads. And then we'll look at how it actually sits in the bot itself. So you can go into conversion kit, general bot settings, and then labels. You can do this in the bot while you're actually building out your pathways. But if you did have, a large list of labels to upload, maybe like a range of products or countries, for example, you could add them in here. So this is obviously a demo platform, so there's quite a lot of labels already created in here. But you would create a group first, so it may be like case studies or subjects or calls to action, and then within that sits the label itself. So it might be, in this case, like which subject are you interested in, and then a list of the subjects. Could also be like a CTA, could be the group, and then the labels would be like book a demo, download brochure, speak to an advisor, like that sort of thing. So really straightforward to create. And then how we use those in the platform will be, there's a couple of different ways. Before we get into the bot, if we look at the leads list itself, so in convert it and unconvert it, you'll see there is a specific column for labels. So this is a really quick way of identifying, what people have been doing within the bot, what leads have been coming through, what pathways they've been taking. You can also create filters then based on those specific labels, and download that and export it if you need it to. And you'll see that we were able to add the variables here as well. So again, there is a bit of crossover with these sort of more advanced options. So it's a good way of seeing where they appear. And then the other area, and we do use this a lot in the optimization calls that we've been on, as I'm sure if you've been on with me, you'll see that in the most chosen labels section under bot insights, gives us a really clear idea of the type of people that are coming to the site, the pathways people are engaging with. So, for example, you could have 20 out of 1,231 went through to like sales, maybe 50% went through to customer service and that sort of thing. So it's a really good way of sort of breaking down the discussions and the traffic that's coming to the site. It gives you a good insight of what sort of people are coming. I mean, that customer versus prospect split is a really good way to think about it, and you can see how they're interacting with it. And then into the actual bot itself. So we've built a few examples here just to show you. This one has scoring and labels in it, so we'll do these sort of two together. But I'll sort of start with the outcome of this bot, and then we'll sort of work backwards. Obviously, if you have any questions written throughout, or you want a specific example, we can go through that. So the idea behind this bot is that we're trying to ascertain if the visitors are hybrid ready, and then if they're not, we can recommend workshops to them to try and improve that. So you'll see that the end result of each of these pathways has a label in it, which is hybrid hero or hybrid hater or something in the middle. And then we're trying to figure out like how do we get to there. So if we go back to the start, we can see that we basically just asked them, and I'll show you the bot in a preview mode in a wee second. You'll see that we're just asking them a bunch of questions about if they're hybrid ready. Do you offer it to more than 50% of your employees? Do they feel trusted to work remotely, etc.? And they just go through, and each time they'll be asked a sort of basically like a yes or no question. And then that we'll be able to assign, in this case, a score. We don't need the labels yet. We can do that just at the end. But in this case, we're adding a score. And the score really is a way of finding out if they're ready or not. We could use the scores in different ways if we wanted to sort of qualify people. So if you were to ask questions about, their budget and their revenue and that sort of thing. So there's lots of different ways we could use that scoring. But in this case, what we've done is we've came through and we've found out, if it's less than 10, then they're a hybrid hero, which is great. And if it's between 40 and 50, then they're a hybrid hero, which means that they're not ready for hybrid working at all. And we need to help them with that. And then so the end result will be, well, if you've come down to these two pathways because you're not really ready for it, then we can get them straight into a calendar booking. So we can show that to them. We can say, let's book you in for a hybrid workshop so we can get you ready. And as Ellen mentioned about filtering those leads in the bot settings themselves, we can also say, So just a wee second. We can also say then hybrid heater leads, they go to Mikhail, and all the other leads go to Madeline, because these are the more priority ones, and he would be the one doing the workshops, for example. So that's how we can use them, how we can use that. And I'll just show you, if we go back to the leads a second, we just refresh this. There should be one populated in here with the labels in it. Maybe it's under to convert it. Oh, maybe I didn't do one yet. Okay, well, we can forget about that for 2 seconds. But yeah, that's basically the idea of the labeling and the scoring sort of combined together to figure out what we'd want to do with those.
I have a question actually, or if you can show this. So when you are adding the labels, so you said that we can add them when you're actually editing the bot. We also showed us how to, like in that other view where you had that whole list.
Exactly.
I'm just, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, good point, because I sort of almost forgot to mention that part there. So whenever you're on, so any node can have a label to it. So in this case, it's just a bot says, but we can label like the specific node. So we could have one of the options at the start to say, I'd like to take the hybrid quiz, or I'm not, I'd like to speak to an advisor, and then we could label those things. So basically, in either any particular option that they answer. So in this case, we could add a label here. So we would either just pick from the group, or you could create a new. You could create a new group. We've already got one set up for that for hybrid readiness, and then from there you can just pick which one you would like, or you can add a new one to say, take quiz. So you can add them as you go, and then they'll be automatically added to those labels that we've already looked at earlier on in here. But you can sort of do it either way, because sometimes you'll not know, or maybe you won't know exactly the labels you'll need until you're actually building out the bots. And yeah, so you just every option, whether it's a bot says or a single choice node or sort of anything in between, you just double click, and under labels, you can just see the list there, and you would just add them that way.
And could you show us how you would say, let's just say you've got like a whole list of services or products, and you know that we need to label them because we want to be able to kind of sync that information with the CRM. Is there like a quicker way to do that?
Yes, that is a very good question, because I'm sure we've all been caught out of adding them in one by one and then getting stuck, and you'll be there for ages. So like the countries is a good one, or the list of products is another good one. Whenever you go to add them from the general bot settings, there is a quick import option. We also have a sample file, because it has to be uploaded in a certain format. So label name, integration value. Now the integration value is if we are going to send it directly to the CRM.
Well, Gavin's internet's going. It keeps telling us that the wind in Ireland affects his internet, so I guess that's what happened today. Let's give him a minute to come back online, hopefully. Okay. Unfortunately, I can't just take over the screen share, so we're going to have to wait for him to rejoin. Are you there?
Am I back? I think I'm back.
Yes, you're back.
Sorry about that. This happened last week as well. The next time I'll do this, I'll go into another room. I'm out in the shed, and it's windy sometimes, and it affects it, which is very strange. But I think we got up to the point of we have a download sample file that you can download. It'll give you a CS or an XLS file that you can then add your labels to, and then you can just import them from here, and you would just upload that file. It'll automatically create this whole list, and then you can match those headers, so label name, integration value, etc.
All right, awesome.
Cool.
So let me take over, and I'll go through dynamic variables then. So there's a couple examples that I want to show you. First one is this one. So I want to show you it within the actual editor. and what it kind of looks like when we set this up. So we've got this panel up here that you can pop out, and this is where you just create the name, so just the label that you're giving that dynamic variable. I've added in some default values because, of course, we're only looking at this in preview. But basically, I'm calling this information from the window object of the web page. But there's various ways that you can bring this information back from the web page. We're not going to go into too much detail about that now. What I'm hoping is that we can write an article in the next couple of weeks that goes into this in a bit more detail about how to set those up. But for now, we'll just give you an idea of like being able to find it in various ways. Your web developer should be able to help you with this, definitely. So I've added them to begin with. And the reason for this is that this bot is going to be on every vehicle listing on a car seller's website. And we don't want to have to create one of these for each and every dealership that exists, because that could be a really long list. It's a lot of work to manage, especially when the structure of the bot is actually the same. So by doing that, we can not just create one bot, but we can also find information that's then brought along with the lead. So it's kind of a dual purpose here. So if I zoom in a little bit, hopefully you can see this. So if I click on, I'd like to book a test drive, it's first checking whether that variable has found the information for which site it is, and that's coming from the web page. Then it's repeating back that information. So we've got that personalization. We're then tagging that contact with that site. So we can then do what Gavin was explaining with the lead filtering. And then it continues on with the contact collection. So I'll show you what that looks like in the preview now. So from a visitor's point of view, this is a very smooth process. So they don't see all of these steps. It just thinks for a minute. It's picked up that I'm on a car that is located in Leeds. It's told me that, so I have that confirmation as well. And then I can just go through and book my test drive. It also means that that booking is going to go through to the correct team. So you can see that that, from a visitor's point of view, is really straightforward. Did I write enough numbers there? Yes, I did. I won't show you this in a live lead, but I'll open up this dynamic variable panel again. So the one thing that we've seen in this is the site, but there's two other things that are coming through on here, which is the vehicle make. Do I need to zoom in a little bit? The vehicle make and the fuel type. So that is being collected, but it's not being shown within the conversation. And what it will do is put that on the lead information. So that's where you can essentially pick up hidden information, but it's useful, especially for this customer where they have to have this to be able to make sure that it goes into the right place on their CRM. Okay, I'm wondering whether, I think you can take over to do the calculations, actually, unless you had any questions.
I have a quick question, actually, about, you mentioned about, creating those custom journeys for people and personalizing that sort of side of it. So if you had an example where you had like multiple product pages, can we use the variables then to then create like personalized experiences per bot? So say you had like 50 products, but you don't want to make 50 in-page bots. But you wanted to be able to create like the experience for people that it could feed that information back to them that they were on those certain pages and that sort of thing. Like, we could use it for that, couldn't we?
Absolutely. So I'm just going to give you an example here. So I've got to remember how to do this, but I can add the URL. So pick up the URL. I think it's like this. Via that variable. I can then add it into the advanced logic router. Let's close this preview panel. So in this one, we were looking up the site, but I can write it differently. Let's go for that. So it means that if the leads was in the URL, I can get it to do something totally different. Where I've used this the most is if we're working with SaaS companies, for example, or even education companies. So we've got one bot that's across multiple courses. But again, in the same example, we don't want to create it so many times. So I can look up the information from that URL and then just add the information after that. So if it's on this page, this is what they're going to see next without having to create multiple bots. So it actually is quite a simple process that should make things faster, but also enable you to personalize your bots more. Does that explain?
Makes reporting a lot easier as well, yeah? That's,
sorry?
you know, it'll make reporting a lot easier as well.
Yes. So as I think Gavin's trying to say, like when we can see kind of the analytics of bot, then we're not having to look at 20 different ones. You can kind of see it all in one aggregated, so you can optimize it more easily. Okay. We might have lost Gavin again. So in that case, I'm going to... Are you back?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I'm going to let you take over then, and Gavin's going to talk you through.
See if we can make it this time.
Yes.
And the next time I'm going to a different room. 100%.
Okay, thank you.
I need my monitors with me. That's it. So, yeah, the calculations is a really common one that we would use. I've built one, and I'll show you a live example of this, but just how it works in the back end first, and then we can go through a preview of it. So this one is going to be a calculator bot to get a finance quote. So again, we're starting with that option of, get a finance quote or speak to an advisor, and then we're asking for, or we start tagging it with those labels. And then what we're doing here is we've created the dynamic variables as Helen shown earlier, but we're not using the 3 dots here because we don't need to read from window or anything like that. For example, we're just saying that this is going to be a number field, and then we don't need to put a value in because this is all going to be controlled by the input of the visitor themselves. So in this case, we've got the borrow amount, and then like over how many years do they want to repay it, and then we need to sort of figure out how we can get the interest and feed this information back to them. So let me show you how it works first, and then we can sort of dive into the specifics. So in this case, you can see that we've got. And let me just. Do I need to make that bigger? Is that okay?
I think it's okay on my screen.
I'll make it a tiny bit bigger. So if we say get a finance quote. So like, how much would you like to borrow? So let's say 5,000. Oh, that's maybe because of the internet. Oh, hold on. Okay. Let's see.
Sorry about all of this connection issues today, everyone. Okay, maybe I can take over to explain from beyond. So the example that Gavin's showing you is actually for a house builder. So the idea is that you go through this finance quote, we can ask what their budget is to be able to then deliver some information later. Hopefully by the time Gavin's back on the go, then he'll be able to take you through it properly. Unfortunately, as I said, I can't take over the screen, but thank you for bearing with us. We can always reschedule it.
Sorry, 2 seconds. I'm just moving.
Thank you. Do you want to switch over to me, and then I'll go through the lookup stuff and we'll come back to calculations, or are you ready?
I'm ready now.
Okay.
Okay. So apologies for that. Okay, so everyone can see this. Okay, I've only got one screen now, so I'm a bit blind.
Yes.
So the idea is, yeah, we've got finance quote, and what we want to do is make it nice and simple for people to be able to get that information. So we're going to ask them how much would they like to borrow. They'll give us, however much it is. In this case, we'll say 5,000, and then we'll say like over how many years would you like to be able to repay this? And then from there, we'll say 3. So in the background, what's happening, and this is maybe just a wee bit jittery because it's in the preview window, but in the background, all those calculations are happening so that we can then give the answer back to the visitor in the end. So we're going to be able to say the total repayable amount is 6,245, and that'll be a monthly payment of X, and then we'll go from there. Now, we can gate this information if we want, and as we've seen in the other example that I showed, we did put the gate first, but you can always put that after. I mean, that's completely up to you, and depending on what the sort of visitor experience you want to create is. So how did we get to these numbers? I suppose let's have a quick look and go through there. So as I say, what we've done is we've created like open field text to say, how much would you like to borrow? And then because we've added these variables at the top, we're able to then assign a variable to that specific field. And so we're saying this, we want you to read their answer and assign it to the borrow amount. So we'll be able to see that they've borrowed 5,000. And then same idea with these options, because we're saying like how often or sort of over how many years would you like to borrow this for? And so we put in 2, 3, 4, 5. And then each of those options will say yearly repayment is a variable, but we want to set the value in this case because it'll need to be different depending on which one it is. And then from there, we move into the calculations themselves. So we've got 2 calculator fields, and then from there we're using the variables. So you can either from the drop down here add them in, or if you know what they're called, you can just type them in, like Helen was doing when she was showing her example. You can just type them in, and then from there it's just a matter of building out the calculation itself. So divide it by 100 times 24.9 because that would be the APR, and then we'll then add those 2 numbers together in the next calculator to find out what the total repayable will be. So we're getting the borrow amount plus the interest, and then from there we would tell it what is the output variable. So what is the end result of this calculation, and then again, because you'll notice that most of these things use labels and logic routers together, we're able to say, because we've asked that question earlier, of how many years would you like to borrow this, then we're able to come back to this point and say, well, we don't want to have to make 5 different pathways depending on what they've answered, because it's a waste of time and it makes the bot look messy, and it's harder then to make edits and things like that. So we put the logic router in to then decide, well, if they said 2, 3, 4, or 5, we'll go down a different path and we'll say, okay, well, let's get the total repayable we had and divide that by the amount of months. And then at the end result is what we saw on the screen here. So we're adding that in as the total repayable and breaking it down into monthly repayments. Does that all make sense?
Give us some thumbs up. There is actually a tutorial that Gavin's recorded. So if you can just show us on the left-hand side there where it says tips and help. So this is our in like app chatbot. So actually in here, there is a video that you can access so you can follow this along whilst you're building. And so just to remind yourself of all these steps. So you don't have to remember them, but that's right there where you need it.
Excellent.
I think you covered this, Gavin, actually, which is about like, can visitors see calculations? And I think there's 2 parts, like, can they see what's happening behind the scenes? And can we then see what information they've inputted after?
Well, that's why I wanted to show you what it looks like from the visitor perspective first, because they'll never see, obviously we've got lots of different nodes here. We've got 1, 2, 3 calculation steps. They'll never see that information. They'll only see the end result, which is the total repayable and the monthly repayments. But your second point, what we want to do is, and depending on how long the conversation is, and it's also just a nice visitor feedback, is to just confirm what they've answered. We could add more in here. We could add in that interest and that borrow amount into here. So we could say with And then from the variable, just click on that to get into the drop down and click borrow amount. So we can feed back the information that they've given us as a way of sort of confirming what they've put in. So we can say with the borrow amount of X, your repayments would be this, and your monthly repayments would be that. So this is what they would see at the end. But yeah, they would never see any of this, any of the calculations. But it's always nice to feed back what they've answered, I think, anyway.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Right. I'll throw you back to you now to do the lookup, and hopefully that's the end of the internet issues.
Yes.
Now that I've jumped into my son's room, in case you can see any of his Transformer posters behind me.
I mean, he's got good taste, obviously, as a 10-year-old.
Yeah, almost.
Okay. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to cover just as a reminder. So there's two kind of different uses for the lookup tool. So one is about like delivering the right kind of ebook or downloadable content. And the second one's going to be about like how to kind of pull back information. So in this case, it's finding the dates of courses and when they're running. There is a lot of ways that you can use this. And I'm not sure if they're on the call, but I know that one of the companies that I onboarded, we use this to bring back delivery costs. So it's a way of just having one place for this to live. So if we've got, again, 10, 20 bots, you don't want to be updating those with that information. You want it to be one place, and then it finds the information from there. So in this example, and I'll demonstrate it first and then explain how this all works together. Oh, that's a good start. There we go. Must have just gone to sleep. So in this case, this in-page bot would be on a landing page with a downloadable. So as you know, right now you might have like a form there, and then it goes on to either a new page and then opens the download from there. So there's a few more steps. And as you may know, we don't like forms. So in this case, I'm saying download this ebook. I'm still gating it. But once I go through this step, it's already read that the page that I'm on, so we're actually using dynamic variables and lookup together here. So it's looking up the URL of the page that I'm on, which in this case, it's a guide about Australia. It's then looked for that on the list that I've put into the platform, and it's giving me the link for it. So that is actually opening in a new tab now. And that's the guide. So they've got it straight away, but you've also got all of the information of that lead, what guide they've downloaded, what page they were on. And so you get that extra rich data that you would get with any lead in Leadoo. So how does that actually get put together? Let's zoom in a little bit. So again, like we explained before, there's a dynamic variable in there, which is just looking for the URL. I've inputted a default value just to do this demonstration, but of course, then you would add this extra information here. So it would look that information up. Let me get rid of that. Then if I move across, you can see there's one thing here, which is the ebook results lookup query. So what I've done is I've told it to look at this data source. And that is uploaded here. So under general bot settings, there we go. And then there's a lookup table option. If you don't see this on your platform, we may just need to activate this for you. So if you need it, just let us know. And then I've uploaded a table which has various things. We know it's looking for information in the country string. So does that URL contain this information? It's then got the URL of the guide that we want to deliver to them and the information that you want to appear on the button. So if I jump back to here, so you can see I've selected my data source, which is that ebook table. I've then say, right, look for this column with this information. In this case, I'm saying the URL, but you could quite easily just write information in here. So you could change this just to be like text that you're looking for. Then I'm selecting what information I want it to save. So essentially what information I want to then show the person on the next step. Then just like with any bots, we're using the center URL node here. I'm saying, right, okay, it's looked up the information. This is the one I've named it, ebook results. And then I want it to display this information. And you saw before it says, download the guide for Australia. And in the background, obviously, it's got that URL attached. So this is definitely probably one of our most advanced ones. So I know that we've left this till last, but hopefully the kind of process makes sense in terms of how we get this information. I'm going to show you another example, which is the course lookup. And this is probably a little bit simpler, actually. So in this case, I've got 3 different things happening. So I want to be able to provide information about these courses. And in this case, we've got 2 sites that are in person and 1 site that is, or 1 set of dates that's remote. So of course, someone could go through that website journey, find this information on various web pages, but that's going to take them a lot more clicks to get that information. Whereas this, it's interactive, it's everywhere on the website, and they can find that information. So I'm going to go for the courses in Glasgow. And you can see here, it's really fast at bringing back this information. So it's saying, here are the courses coming up. Select one and I'll send you more information about them. So this way I could say, right, these are the dates I'm interested in. Then we would capture the contact details and the advisor could send them more information about those dates, whether it's costs, whether it's how many places are left. So you've already captured really valuable information, but given value to the customer at the same time, being able to find this information quickly. And like I said, again, you're just updating one place when you're coming to change the dates. So of course, these are old dates, but you just come in here, re-upload that list with the new dates in it, and you wouldn't have to touch anything in the bot. You just have to update this information. I ran through that quite quickly, but I want to leave with a couple minutes at the end for any questions. But Gavin, was there anything that you wanted me to show in more detail?
Well, actually, you just answered my my question there. It was just going to be around sort of file types and uploading it. And that course one's a really good example because, I mean, you would assume they would change quite regularly with the different dates and different term times and things like that. So it's just a case of you just re-uploading the file, it just overwrites whatever's there. Is there any sort of things to be aware of with those files?
Yeah, it's a good question. So just like with the labels and all the other kind of drop-down menus and things like that, we've got a sample file that you can use as a template. The main thing is using exactly the same spreadsheet that you used before, and it would be saved as a CSV. So what we know is that you can add new columns on, you can add new information and update what's here, but you don't want to then go and remove a whole column and change this entirely. It won't let you do it, but you just upload it as a new one. So if it needs to do a new function, just create a new one. Otherwise, if it's just updating dates, find your CSV file, update the information, and then click the update button here and just upload it again. It's a couple-step process and it's quite fast.
Excellent. And then I suppose without going too deep into this, that the email notify option there, we had an example of clients before that they were sending it specifically to like dealerships or branches, that you could, if someone selected that branch from the lookup output, that could automatically be emailed to them. So we could be sending leads, if you had sort of resellers, for example, like that's, if that was included in the CSV, we could automate those parts of it as well.
Yeah, and in this example, actually, you could say, right, well, because they're inquiring about Glasgow, then I can notify the Glasgow team about that inquiry. So without any interaction, so there's none of that farming out of leads on your end. It's happening automatically in the background.
Cool. That sounds good.
Okay. So just a reminder, you can find all our previous webinars here. As I said, we will do some articles just to go into this in a bit more detail so you can follow them in your own time. But if there is any questions, please post it now. But you can also get in touch with us afterwards if you've got an idea that you want to explore and see whether we can use any of this functionality to help you do it.
Cool. I don't think I have any more particular questions. I think you covered everything really well with those two topics. So unless there's anyone else.
Well, okay. Well, I hope that you all found this useful today. If you pick up any of these tools, you will be part of the Leadoo kind of nerd club, because there's only a handful of us that touches these things when we want to do something really clever with the bots. So if you do create these without our help, then please share, because we'd love to see them.
Cool. Okay, well, we'll call it there for now, and we obviously keep an eye out for the next one. Maybe sort of same sort of time in July-ish. But obviously we'll be sending out an email about that with the topic and the date confirmation. Hope to see you there.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.